Let's watch this. Here we go. So I was watching Ian Carroll, and he's watching this guy's show. Baron, I can't get his last name. I'll get his name. Can you find out what that is?
Baron Coleman.
Looks like Baron Coleman, who's been doing these Google searches. He cracked the code, and so Ian is going to cover this. Watch this.
He searched Tyler James Robinson, which is Tyler Robinson's full name. Most of us don't know Tyler Robinson's full name, but it is Tyler James Robinson.
Tyler James Robinson. So I did a search for Tyler James Robinson nationally over the entire United States for the past 7 days. And you'll notice the gigantic spike right after the news broke. But I noticed right over here, there was a little blip on September 9th.
So you see here, that's right after the shooting, after the assassination. Everybody was Googling Tyler Robinson's name. But there's a blip over here before the shooting. Wait, what? Somebody was Googling Tyler James Robinson's full name before the shooting?
That's insider trading, Jimmy.
Let's listen.
7 p.m. Damn, that's weird.
That is weird.
And keep in mind, this is a blip large enough to show up on an index at a 2. Now, granted, I'm going to keep going. You're going to be surprised by what I show you here in a few minutes. It's a blip large enough to show up as a 2 the day before the Kirk shooting. The day before the Kirk shooting, someone in the United States searched Tyler James Robinson, the full name, first, middle, last name of the shooter. Now, what's interesting about that is I've not seen him listed anywhere as Tyler James Robinson.
Me neither.
I've seen Tyler Robinson a lot. I've seen his mom's name. I think her name was Amber.
Okay, so not going to sit around and watch the whole thing. I recommend that you do go watch the whole thing because he gets into more granular detail. And he looks up different locations and he hones in. And he also looks for other locations where there is no data and he shows you that. And so the granularity of watching his whole stream is important because you get the context that it's not he's not just like cherry picking random things.
Correct.
And being like, look, there's a crazy trend. He's looking all over and he's showing you that like, no, it's just searched in this one place at this one time, not anywhere else, not any other time. That's weird. And what he realizes is that Tyler James Robinson was searched the day before the shooting in the United States, and he hones in on realizing that Tyler James Robinson was searched in Washington, D.C. at 12 p.m. the day before the shooting. And he was searched in Huntsville, Alabama at 4 p.m. the day before the shooting. And Huntsville, Alabama is a weird place.
So twice, his name, Tyler James Robinson, was searched on Google, once from D.C. and once from Huntsville, Alabama, the day before the shooting. And what's interesting about that?
But he knows from his time looking into Thomas Matthew Crooks, which is where he first started applying this technique to crimes like this, to high-profile cases. He knows that in Huntsville, Alabama, there's an enormous FBI field office.
Oh! Isn't that interesting? So someone is Google searching Tyler James Robinson the day before the shooting from Washington, D.C. and from Huntsville, Alabama, which is a major FBI center. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? And of course, Don Jr. this doesn't interest him. Neither Megyn Kelly. We just did 2 segments on both of them, and they're pretending like the establishment story 100% true, and they have no questions about it. None. So
Huntsville, Alabama shows a lot of blips on a lot of searches that he winds up doing. And then also the District of Columbia at 9 p.m., there was a huge signal. And that is...
it happens before all the shootings, too, if you want to hear a coincidence.
Yeah.
Audrey Hale, remember that one? Same exact thing happened.
No, tell me about that.
The one I sent you the files of. I sent him to James Lee, too. Maybe he'll put them up. I said someone should check all the shootings. And somebody did and sent it to me. And guess what? A search just like that happens before everything. Not only that, the New Jersey drone incident. They had a major spike in searches before that.
So I don't know what you make of that, but it's one of a million things that make zero sense and only point to the fact that this was a coordinated assassination that was planned way in advance of the assassination.
Every story has a beginning, but not every story reveals its truth at the beginning. Some stories bury it so deep in the middle that only the patient ever find it. On September 10th, 2025, in a building filled with cameras, guards, scanners, and professionals trained to spot a threat before it happens, Charlie Kirk walked onto a stage to speak, and by the time the crowd realized something was wrong, it was already over. In the chaos, emotions outran facts. People screamed, phones dropped, security scrambled, and headlines were being drafted before the lights in the auditorium even came back on. And within hours, a name was released: Tyler Robinson. Please, before we continue, never forget to drop your contribution. Please drop your comment as you listening to this new updates. We would definitely respond to all comment. We stand for truth. We stand for Charlie. Not a trial, not a hearing, not even time for the dust to settle, just a name. Presented to the public as the answer. But answer to what? In the days that followed, something quietly shifted. Documents disappeared behind seals. Courtroom cameras were restricted. Evidence lists were redacted before the public could even see what was missing. Interviews stopped. Officials fell silent. Every time clarity was expected, another layer of fog rolled in. And somewhere between what was shown and what was withheld, one question refused to die. Is Tyler Robinson truly the architect of this tragedy, or just the most convenient place to put the blame? If the truth is so certain, why is so much of it hidden? Keep watching, because unanswered questions don't fade away. They wait, and eventually, they demand to be answered. What do you think? Is the case moving forward carefully, or is progress being slowed by procedural delays? Share your thoughts in the comments below. That's where we hear your thought, cues. We will definitely respond to all comment, and also make sure you comment where you're watching from. To stay updated on every development, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and also don't hesitate to support this movement so you stay informed as new update becomes available. This is Detective Max, and together we fight for justice. Utah Valley University. A speaking event. A public figure, Charlie Kirk, surrounded by supporters and critics alike. A security team, trained, equipped, and paid by the institution to see what others don't. Metal detectors at the doors, access points monitored, badges checked, controlled entry. On paper, it should have been one of the safest places in the state. And yet, somewhere between the planning and the execution, one pathway, one single rooftop access point, was left unguarded. Long enough for someone to quietly walk up. Long enough for someone to position themselves. Long enough for everything to change. All it took was a moment. One small opening. One overlooked detail. In high security environments, nothing is supposed to be random. Every movement is logged. Every doorway is assigned. Every vantage point is evaluated. So how does a rooftop, offering a clear visual line to a public speaker, remain accessible without constant oversight? Tyler Robinson. How does that happen? On accident. Universities have risk assessments. Event teams follow checklists. Even basic venue security train staff to protect elevated positions. And yet, on that day, one elevated position, the most strategic position, was left open. The word oversight doesn't feel big enough. Not when a man's life ended under the watch of professionals. A pathway was open. Someone used it, and now a family is grieving. According to publicly available court documents and media reports, Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, was arrested the same evening. DNA evidence was collected, reportedly linking him to the rifle. Within days, prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty. From the outside, it looked simple, efficient, immediate. A name was given, a story was assigned. The public was told the case was solid, and in a world overloaded with instant reactions and short attention spans, the simplest version of a story often becomes the accepted one. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Cases that are genuinely airtight don't need to be shielded from view. They don't require sealed documents or withheld footage or restricted access to courtroom cameras. Transparency protects the truth. Secrecy protects something else. Yet that is exactly what began to unfold. Records sealed from public view, hearings closed, discovery materials redacted before anyone outside the system could review them. Instead of clarity, there came whispers. Ongoing investigation, safety precautions, sensitive information. When answers are clean, explanations don't sound so complicated. When the truth is simple, people don't need to hide the details. But here, the more questions people asked, the further the answers seemed to move out of reach. An open and shut narrative became foggy. A confident statement faded into controlled silence. And that silence feels less like caution and more like protection. Protection of what, or of whom, remains unanswered. In the days that followed, something subtle happened. The storyline, the one that was announced with lightning speed, began to shift. At first, no cameras were allowed in certain hearings. The explanation given was procedure and protection of the legal process. Then documents that could have added clarity, were quietly sealed. The stated reason, security concerns. After that, reporters requesting access to evidence were told that releasing certain materials might interfere with the investigation. Little by little, what was supposed to bring truth became wrapped in layers of limitation. And suddenly, what was presented as an open and shut case began to feel closed and hidden instead. That's the strange part. When the truth is solid, you don't need to restrict visibility. You don't have to protect people from seeing too much. Clarity doesn't fear daylight. But here, every step toward transparency was met with another locked door. A new rule, a sealed page, a phrase that ended questions. It's still under investigation. The more the public asked, the less the public was allowed to see. A story that began with confidence slowly dissolved into uncertainty. Most people don't notice it when the narrative shifts, but silence is loud if you're listening. Because fog is not a place where truth lives. Fog is where truth waits to be found. A high-profile speaker, a known public figure, a politically charged gathering, and in an environment like that, every risk is supposed to be assessed, twice. Yet the rooftop, the one elevated position with a direct line of sight to the stage, was unsecured. Who approved that? Why was that access point unlocked? And why, according to internal event operations communications, was the guard assigned to that zone redirected minutes before everything unfolded? Think about the timing. Think about the placement. Security is not random. Assignments are coordinated, logged, and supervised. When someone leaves their post without explanation, that raises concern. When that moment lines up with a tragic incident, it raises questions. And when those questions are met with silence, it raises suspicion. Professionals were on payroll that day. Taxpayer resources were allocated. Every precaution was supposed to exist. Yet the one access point, the one place that demanded attention, was left vulnerable. Vulnerabilities don't appear by magic. They appear by decisions, and each decision has a name attached to it. Tyler Robinson walked into the courtroom looking almost unrecognizable. Clean-shaven, hair trimmed, dressed in civilian clothing instead of detention attire. The judge allowed it to protect the legal principle that every defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But here's the contradiction. In that same courtroom, before the first witness, before the first piece of evidence was debated, the prosecution announced their pursuit of the death penalty. Think about that for a moment. On one hand, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. On the other, we want the harshest sentence possible. Presumed innocent, yet treated as if guilt was already certified. When a narrative is rock solid, no one needs to shape the optics. When a case is airtight, you don't need to polish the defendant's appearance to avoid public sympathy. Someone wanted him to look harmless in court, while another side wanted the public to believe he was beyond redemption. 2 images, 1 person. But the question remains, was he presented this way because he was guilty, or because he was convenient? A perfect suspect is not the same thing as the right suspect. Access to discovery records, restricted. Courtroom footage, limited. Key evidence requests, delayed or denied. These decisions weren't random. They formed a pattern. The pattern wasn't about clarity. It was about control. When information is open, the public can decide for themselves. But when access is narrowed, when only selected details are allowed to be seen, that's not transparency. That's narrative management. So the question becomes, why control what the public sees? If the truth speaks for itself, why do simple requests for clarity trigger complicated restrictions? Why does transparency feel like a threat? A system acting confidently does not hide evidence. A system acting truthfully does not fear cameras. Silence is rarely accidental. And when silence repeats, it becomes strategy. Every crime has a beneficiary. Someone gains, someone walks away untouched. So ask the question that investigators ask when evidence gets cloudy. Who benefits? Who benefits from the narrative that Tyler acted alone? Who benefits from closing the case quickly? Who benefits from the public looking at one face, instead of looking at the system that failed? When a story is rushed, when the conclusion arrives faster than the facts, the focus often lands on the easiest target. Because sometimes the easiest person to blame is not the one who created the storm. Sometimes they're just the one holding the match. Matches don't ignite themselves. Fires don't choose their own targets. Someone lights them. And the person holding the match is not always the person who struck it. A family lost a husband. A mother lost a son. A movement lost a voice. And while people argue politics, debate theories, pick sides online like it's a sport, a life is gone. The headlines moved on. The internet found a new topic. But the people who loved him? They wake up to the same empty chair every morning. Somewhere, a phone still has unread messages that will never be opened. Somewhere, a calendar still holds the plans he never got to keep. This isn't just a case. It's not content. It's not a trending discussion. It's a family asking for truth. And while the world keeps scrolling, justice sits in the hallway, waiting for someone to care enough to stop and look back. Truth has a price. And in this case, that price is being counted in dollars. Hearings and hours of emotional exhaustion. Utah County officials now estimate that the prosecution may exceed millions in legal costs. Taxpayer-funded, resource-heavy, emotionally draining, and people ask, is it worth it? To the system, it's paperwork. To the public, it's a headline. But to the family, it's not about the money. It's not about the politics. It's not even about winning. It is about truth. You can't put a price tag on that. You can't measure the value of closure with a budget sheet. Because justice isn't expensive. Injustice is. At some point, this stops being about court documents. It stops being about timelines, evidence lists, and security protocols. It becomes about something far more human. A man is gone. A family is grieving. A community is left with questions that no one seems eager to answer. Maybe Tyler Robinson is guilty. Maybe he isn't. But accountability doesn't come from picking the most convenient person to blame. It comes from making sure the truth, the full truth, is seen, not hidden. So as this case moves forward, keep asking the uncomfortable questions. Because silence protects systems. Only pressure protects truth. And one day, when the noise fades and the headlines have moved on, the real question will remain: did we chase truth or just accept the first name handed to us?